handle the truth. You can't handle the truth.
What do all men with power want? More power.
And now, broadcasting live from deep within the borders of occupied liberal territory known as California, Luca Zanna with Love, Guns, and Freedom.
All systems go.
Don't tread on us. We're not afraid. You work for us.
Here we go. Another Sunday, another show. Today is broadcasting May the 4th, 2014, live. I have some very special guests, and let's start to introduce them, okay? First of all, I'm very happy and pleased I have here in the studio our Arizona State Representative, Mr. Sonny Borrelli. Hi, Sonny.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you very much for coming, and I tell you also I'm very excited he's here today. It's not just because it's campaign time, it's election time. You know, a few months ago, I had the pleasure to have Mr. Borrelli, Representative Borrelli, here in the studio. We had a nice conversation to know each other a little better. I was very pleased to know most of his voting records and where he stands. And at the same time, because the goal of this show is to try to help each other, educating each other, because, you know, it's a process. You know, we never know everything, okay? So I gave him a little documentary that was about geoengineering, aka in the vulgar way called chemtrails. And, you know, Sonny said, okay, let me watch it, okay? And I know he's busy, he got a lot of things going on in Phoenix, but he finally found the time, and I was very pleased to watch this. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Sonny, he has some questions, right?
Oh, yes, there's some very compelling information and on that, and it raises more questions than there are answers.
Perfect. That's why today I also have on the line right now, and I'm going to put it live right now on the air, a very interesting person, a very respectable and very, I call an expert, okay? That she's here today with us talking about exactly this topic, geoengineering. Mrs. Rosalind Peterson from California. Let me put her on. Mrs. Peterson, are you there? 1 second only.
Special hello to your guest, Representative Borrelli.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Very good, Mrs. Peterson. Thank you very much for taking the time to be with us today, because, you know, I know you're a busy lady and it's Sunday on top, but your presence is very important, and I tell you exactly why. My goal today is being as professional as possible with facts. We're talking about hardcore cold facts, okay? Information, laws, or even pieces of evidence that we can show if or not there is some sort of something happening in our skies, activities that they are not normal, called geoengineering, that they are or they may influence our health, our agriculture, our nature and environment. So that's why you're here, okay?
Yes, thank you.
Perfect. Please, you have such a beautiful background, and I don't want to somehow, you know, miss something. Can you please briefly introduce yourself to the public? Who you are, where you're from, what is your expertise, your background?
Yes, I'd be happy to do that. My name is Rosalind Peterson, and I was born and raised on a working farm in Mendocino County, and that's in Northern California. I worked in my professional life both for the Mendocino County Agriculture Department and the United States Department of Agriculture Farm Service Agency, and not only Mendocino County, but as a agriculture crop loss adjuster for the USDA in about 10 counties where we assessed crop losses for crop insurance purposes. My background, I have a BA degree in environmental studies and planning with emphasis on agriculture, climate, and problems associated with, in other words, finding alternative energy sources. Things like those issues were the emphasis of my education. In addition, I testified as at the United Nations on climate change and agriculture in 2007, and that presentation is online at this time. But I discussed geoengineering and some of the atmospheric issues that are impacting not only agricultural crop production, but tree health. And thus, I was invited here today to talk about geoengineering and the issues surrounding what we do know surrounding this issue. To be quite precise, geoengineering has several definitions, but it's defined as planetary scale environmental engineering of our atmosphere, our weather, the oceans, by various and sundry schemes to reduce the amount of direct sunlight reaching the Earth, supposedly to cool us down. And you introduce particles and chemicals or man-made clouds into the atmosphere, and what you have is geoengineering. But when you're talking about the atmosphere, they call it climate remediation or solar radiation management. And that's completely defined as, in other words, a way to reduce the amount of direct sunlight reaching the Earth.
Mrs. Peterson,
Yes.
First of all, this is a fact. I see there are out there media, like even mainstream media, articles on CNN. Right now I'm reading, for example, an article on Reuters, UN urged to freeze climate geoengineering projects. I mean, we're not talking about just a bunch of conspiracy theories that some sort of a secret plan, even of course it's been secret so far. I guess it's very hard to bring it to the public. But my point is, first of all, who is behind this? Because there is a lot of money involved here. There is a lot of we're talking about just the JPL, just the gasoline of these jets and the airplanes and the manpower. I mean, it seems like it is not just the United States factor and problem. It seems like it's all over the world, at least the Western world. What do you think, who is behind? When all this started?
Well, this has a history. Geoengineering has a history of going back to Lawrence Livermore Laboratories in California under Edward Teller. And his associates were talking about geoengineering. And I want you to know that the U.S. House Science and Technology Committee held 3 hearings on this in conjunction with the UK Parliament in between 2009 and 2010. And these hearings are online. People can look at those that spoke about geoengineering during these hearings, and they were talking at that time between the UK and the U.S. House Committee. We're talking about global geoengineering governance rules, and they excluded public debate participation and knowledge. It wasn't even broadcast on C-SPAN, nor were these hearings covered by the media in any way whatsoever that I could find, which was a surprise to me because I found out about these hearings and did the research on them after the fact. So we do know that this has been under discussion, and it's also under discussion at the United Nations as well. Geoengineering is talked about. There's been iron ocean fertilization, one geoengineering program that has failed miserably when done experimentally in our oceans. But the major push now is to control climate and global warming by releasing sulfur and aluminum oxide particles into the atmosphere, which do come back down to Earth, but to release them on a consistent basis worldwide in order to supposedly cool the Earth without taking into consequences air, water, soil pollution, acid rains, and other health issues from either the aluminum oxide or the sulfur that would be released.
Representative Borrelli, so far, this information that we learn here, we're talking about, any questions you have?
Well, we're talking about the global warming to try to cool the planet. Okay, I remember 30 years ago, during the 70s, we were moving into an ice age, is what we were all told. And it's amazing how we've switched from the extreme cold to global warming. Of course, they mask it now with a new word it's called climate change. It's just amazing how these trends change, and then the language changes, and the definitions change, obviously, to fit that narrative.
Yeah, and I agree with you that part. My only point now is, since they're using this excuse or whatever reason they think it's the global warming, but the point is there is a plan, and it's not just United States government plan. It seems like a global plan. There are different governments of the world, and correct me if I'm wrong, is the United Nations probably coordinating all this effort? But because must be some sort of a coordination there. I know in Europe, for example, in Germany, Italy, England, I mean, this is happening as bad as here. It is not just America. So somebody must coordinate this huge amount of resources for this plan that they tell us now is to save us from global warming. Now, regardless that we believe it's a fraud or not, this global warming, the very main question would be releasing these metals, these chemical elements in the atmosphere. I mean, we are human beings. We going to breathe these things, Mrs. Peterson. This can be a huge danger to our health. What do you think?
I think it would be an extreme danger not only to our health, but would the acid rain caused from, for example, using sulfur would be enormous. And I think it would only mask the warming effect, but I think that the repercussions from a lack of direct sunlight reaching the earth would have enormous consequences. So one of the things that I have been investigating since 2002 are these persistent jet contrails that create man-made clouds and haze. And I have noticed that the increasing cloud cover has begun to impact crop production, impact tree health, and also lower solar panel power production, because when you put artificial clouds over us and keep our skies clouded, what happens to all of us is that if we put in a solar power plant or if we put in solar panels on our house, it reduces the amount of solar power reaching these different forms of power that we could use. And what it does is when it lowers power production, then we're going to have less solar power available to us for either large power plants or our homes. In addition, we started seeing these man-made clouds and persistent jet contrails, and NASA has said that they can cause long-term changes in Earth's climate, as well as they can modify local weather conditions. And also, these man-made clouds actually trap heat. Now, from an agricultural standpoint, which is my background, what happens is that all of our crops, whether they're tree crops like apples, all of our crops need to have a certain amount of freezing temperatures at night. It's called fruit set hours. And if they don't get a certain number of fruit set hours below 32 degrees each year, crop production is severely reduced. And so when you have man-made cloud cover at night, keeping the temperatures warmer, and we have Stanford University studies on this, we have NASA studies on this, which I've not only provided on my website, but also I'm willing to talk to anyone about this issue or provide the documentation. But what I'd like to say about this is that this heat at night and not allowing cooling temperatures to reach below 32 degrees not only impairs crop production, but it impairs tree health. Now, when you remove the amount of direct sunlight reaching the earth, you disrupt the photosynthesis process, which is needed for all trees and crops and plants and everything on earth to grow healthy and strong. And when you start reducing the amount of direct sunlight, no matter how you do it, but right now we're seeing the effect of the man-made clouds in our skies all the time, we're beginning to see tree health start to deteriorate because the lack of direct sunlight reduces the photosynthesis process. And also, you need direct sunlight for the plants and trees just to respond and produce crops. So trees, when they have warmer temperatures at night and moist conditions, then they're impacted by molds, mildews, fungus, and pests as well. So we see an increase because of this man-made cloud cover at night, that these pests increase in number and attack the trees, who are less healthy from having a lack of direct sunlight, having enough photosynthesis to take place. So we're beginning to look at more and more research on this issue, and we're beginning to see in our forests and in the lands here in California, in the counties where I live and other counties, a decline in tree health and a decline in crop production.
By the way, I have Representative Borrelli as a question. And before I go ahead with the question, I would like to remind your website that is a very much a gold mine of information. It's agriculturedefensecoalition.org. And I also put a link on my website, lovegunsfreedom.com. There is a page dedicated to today's show, and there is a link to your webpage. So agriculturedefensecoalition.org, and there are all proofs, documents, information that I invite everybody's listening to this broadcasting to do your own research, because what she's saying, what Mrs. Peterson is saying is documented by science. And that's what I like about her. What I like about her, it is not just about opinions. Mr. Borrelli, please go ahead.
Thank you, Ms. Peterson. You have some very, very compelling information and a very impressive background. My question is, where is the environmental movement on this? We know that we've heard that they've been chiming in about climate change and so on and so forth, but the message that they're sending out, they're blaming this all on CO2 emissions and everything else, but they're not focusing on these facts, scientific facts that you have. And it's just, I'm curious. I mean, you come from Northern California, where pretty much the environmental movement got a really solid foothold, and we hear nothing about this fighting back or exposing, the chemicals being sprayed in the air to control the clouds and so on and so forth. Where are they? That your community, that community that deals with these kind of things, these folks. Where are they on this, and how come they're silent?
Well, let me go back to 2002 when I first started investigating this, because I started to notice in our skies more and more man-made cloud cover produced by the jets. And the word chemtrail was introduced into the lexicon of what was going into our skies probably around 1995 or 1996. And people had a whole belief system about what the jets were doing, and they mixed so much fact and fiction and conspiracy theories and opinions and beliefs that I was unable to use the word except to explain why I don't use it. And what happened is this caught on as a conspiracy theory. The U.S. Air Force even came out on their website and said that it was that the word chemtrail was a hoax and a conspiracy theory, along with the EPA and all these other agencies, and even our elected officials, right down to our congressman, U.S. Congressman Mike Thompson from California, had come back to say that this was just a conspiracy theory, and that nothing was going on, that everything was normal. The media right away attacked the issue to marginalize anybody that talked about the cloud cover because they could use all of the fiction that had built up around the subject and the misstatement of facts, and there was so much mix of opinion and belief that when many of us came back later, as we developed more research and figured out what was going on, the environmental groups didn't want to pick it up. No one wanted to pick up the issue because it was so marginalized by so many people talking about things that weren't true, to be quite honest with you. So the environmental groups never picked it up. The other issue is that our elected officials, even today, never talk about water vapor, which is a very potent greenhouse gas. And the aviation impacts are tremendous because jets and commercial air traffic and military aircraft release water vapor as one of the byproducts of jet engine combustion, which is highly toxic in itself. But water vapor has never been mentioned. As a matter of fact, our elected officials even have resisted here in California talking about water vapor. And part of this man-made cloud cover and what is happening here involves water vapor, and that's why the heat is trapped against the earth. And at night, if you had clear skies, heat would evaporate away from the earth. And they know this from the Alaska studies that have been conducted in recent years by Stanford University. And what happens is that they know that this heat from aviation traps the cloud cover and the water vapor at night, especially where you don't have clear skies, warms things up and has caused melting in Alaska and the Arctic areas. So there has been some research. The reason that the environmental groups haven't picked it up, I'm not sure, because I think that the conspiracy theory associated with it and our elected officials thinking that this was all about opinions and beliefs and conspiracy theories resisted getting involved in this issue.
Mrs. Peterson, can we identify exactly when you think this started? Because in my own little area where I live, Mojave County, just being an observer, I saw that at least the last 7 years it really increased so much, because I moved to Mojave County about exactly 8.5 years ago, and the first year I was here, the sky was beautiful. We had really limited airplane activities. Then suddenly I couldn't see anymore the sky, and there are some days the sky is completely filled of jet trails or trails, whatever you want to call them. The airplanes, they're flying very low, and there are excess everywhere, and after 2 or 3 days of this sort of activities, the sky is no more blue, it's completely whitish. And by the way, there is also some other things that I would like to share with you during the show. We took, some of us, the time and the money to do some blood tests to ourselves, because we thought, hey, whatever it's coming down from the sky, it may come in our system. About 14 people in Mojave County, spread around the county, did a blood test exactly for aluminum and barium. And the sad thing that according to our doctor, because I'm not a doctor, I'm not trying to interpret the blood test, our blood test, for example, my specific blood test went up from the at least 300 or 350 times 350 times more than the maximum level of barium that a human body could have. We thought that maybe it was something in the water. We tried to analyze different things. We drink from different sources of water. I have my own well. I test my own well, because the former state representative that we were trying to invite here, her name is Nancy McLean. Now she's retired. I asked, please take a look at that. And she said, oh, maybe you guys in Golden Valley drink water from, I don't know, some strange sources. By the way, other people that were from Kingman, they drink from this Kingman water supply. So it wasn't the water. We were thinking about the food, but we eat in different households. We don't live in a commune, okay? So if we remove the water, remove the food, and we have this evidence that about 80 or 85% of us came back with a very high level of aluminum and disturbing level of barium in our blood, according to our doctor, must be coming from somewhere. Now, there are other activities. I want to have an open mind. We also live in a mining area, but regardless, I think that these airplanes, as you say, the activity that they do, even just the JPL itself, the residual of this gas, gasoline for jet propellant, they are very terrible. They're cancerogen. And more important now, we know that you confirm that there are some chemicals element, like, for example, salt of barium. I heard that in different compounds, also from different mainstream media, TV station that were reporting this, and also something with aluminum. Do you know about these aluminum and barium elements, Mrs. Peterson?
I know. Okay, let me explain. Oh boy, you broached the subject here. Other than aluminum-coated fiberglass or chaff released by the military,
okay,
I can't be specific on what the jets may be releasing into the man-made clouds except for jet fuel emissions. On the other hand, the U.S. Navy, the U.S. Air Force, in conjunction with NASA, have released aluminum oxide dust clouds over the United States. They have and are engaged in atmospheric releases using rockets. Now, these programs use rockets, and they conduct atmospheric experiments using rockets. I am heavily concerned that the trimethyl aluminum, barium, aluminum oxide, and several other components that they have released for these experiments do come back down to Earth and do contaminate our air, water, and other sources, land, soil, etc., and can have impacts on all of us. These atmospheric experiments being conducted by the Air Force and the Navy in conjunction with some universities are all online. They've been talked about for years, but they're rocket experiments. They're not related to the jets. And these experiments, there's so many of them that I have trouble listing them all online, but I have listed some of them, especially in recent years, although historically there have been releases as well over the years as more and more atmospheric experiments are conducted. But these are rocket experiments, and most people would not be aware because you can't see them like you can see the man-made clouds and the persistent jet contrails over our skies. So there's different atmospheric programs being conducted, not just one. And I've documented many of them on my website in the barium and aluminum sections, so people can go and look them up and get an idea of what they look like. And these are not classified experiments. They've been in small media outlets, and they've also been on the NASA website, the Navy website. The Navy admits them. It's not a case of where this has been any secret, but the impacts of these particles and chemicals coming back to Earth, that's where I think that we're failing to adequately look at these issues and how they impact human health and crop production, plant life, things like that.
Mr. Borrelli, I know also you've been serving in the Marine Corps, and you're a former military guy. Maybe now you start to get some bigger idea of what's going on, hopefully. What do you think so far? Any questions you have for Mrs. Peterson?
Well, I'm just trying to soak in everything she's got, but I'm not surprised when she said that the U.S. military was denying any of these claims, and naturally they want to divert it and call it a conspiracy theory, because that's how you distract, you distort, you deflect any kind of things, and you always want to thrust it on somebody else. And then, of course, I'm not surprised that the Sierra Club and all these other environmental agencies backed off, because they don't want to bite the hand that actually feeds them, because I mistrust all those groups anyway, because here it is, we've got all this compelling information and a lot of hard evidence and testimony, but yet they're going to make you look like a nut. So, and then naturally, nobody wants to come out and fight it, because we know the government and the media are all together, and they want to control the information, and then they can just, like I said, you'll end up in Gitmo. You know?
I have Michael here. Michael, any question you have, please?
Yes, hi, Ms. Peterson.
Hello.
I saw an article, I read an article where you did an interview with Paul Joseph Watson of Prison Planet about 4 years ago. Do you remember that?
I did an interview for Alex Jones when his film crew came here, yes, and it's online as well. And on that, I talked about this issue quite extensively for about an hour.
Yeah, you mentioned, I think the name John P. Holdren came up during that interview. He's our current science czar. Do you know his views on geoengineering?
Well, he has discussed that it might be an idea to try. Other than that, I haven't heard much about any statements that he has made for a long time. He's not someone that goes public very often with his positions. So as far as anything current, in the last 3 years, I wouldn't be able to tell you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and...
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Mr. Borrelli, I know that I'm swamping you with information at this moment. I apologize, but it's kind of a broad subject. But what I want to let you know is a lot of the information I'm covering is online.
Sure.
And isn't classified. So both the public and you can reference this information, and the public that's listening and you can feel free to contact me anytime, and I'd be happy to send you information which would be pertinent to your areas of interest and questions as well, because I do make myself available to the public on a consistent basis for these types of discussions.
Okay. Well, yeah, I'm not just discrediting or anything, and I know there's a lot of information out there on the internet, but, you know, I come from that background where you trust but verify, and half the stuff on the internet is you really can't trust it. So as far as trusting our own federal government, I have very little trust in it. I mean, they denied Agent Orange for years. They denied that there's the Gulf War syndrome for our troops that came back from the first Gulf War with illness. They deny the effects of burn pits, when everybody knows that everything that goes in a burn pit is all carcinogen and, you know, plastics and treated woods that are you know, with chemicals and everything. And I mean, we're burning our trash, but they're saying, oh, that's okay, that the troops, there won't be no side effects from it. So, you know, and of course, you know, I had to get my anthrax shots when I was in the Marine Corps, and of course I found out they were not even FDA approved, but they said, shut up, take your shot. You know, I mean, I have very little faith in the secrecy or reliability of our federal government. I mean, for God's sakes, they think Benghazi was, you know, just a protest that went bad, and of course the first Fort Hood shooting was a workplace violence. So I don't believe our federal government. I don't believe anything they say. I don't have any confidence in the EPA. I would like to get our own state agency involved, like ADAQ, and I think Senator Ward has contacted ADAQ that we're going to start investigating some things, because these things are very concerning to me. You know, we all have families, and if we're being poisoned, and then we have to look at what is the purpose of all this? What is the real, true intent on the bigger picture? I mean, they always use things, and you know, the government's going to divert attention somewhere else. So, your opinion, what is really the main purpose of all this?
Good question.
I think we're conducting atmospheric experiments, and the jets are conducting experiments for warfare. It's part of the military warfare testing that's ongoing. In other words, for future weapon systems. And I believe that a lot of this that is being engaged in is on that level. In addition, I think that those conducting the tests, whether it's our military or private individuals conducting, for example, there's a lot of ongoing weather modification programs across the United States at this time. NOAA lists about 66 of them in the western states, for example, using small aircraft or ground-based technologies. And this involves California, Nevada, Utah, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, New Mexico, Texas, Kansas. And also there's about 169 ongoing weather modification programs worldwide, as well as the ones in the United States. So those weather modification programs are having a tremendous effect on local climate, and also on our local weather conditions. So you have to know that worldwide climate is impacted, and also local weather conditions. So when we look at climate change, or we look at global warming, we have to look at the impacts of the programs that have been initiated. And the shocking thing to me in the United States was that weather modification programs are not regulated, that any individual, corporation, business, anyone who can hire a weather modification company can enhance weather or snow in any area of the United States. PG&E, Pacific Gas and Electric Company, a private utility, and the city of Los Angeles, for example, both conduct weather modification programs in California, which has more than 20 of them ongoing at any particular time. usually during the late fall, winter, and early spring months, almost up through June most years. So these all have their impacts. And one of the things that I sent to in and really look at pretty widely is that these weather modification programs can put one area, one county, one state into a drought condition when the clouds and the rains are enhanced in other areas. So this is of a particular concern to me as well. And so just to say that we're having climate change as a broad term or something doesn't identify these other problems that we're having nor make mention of them, which I think is critical to be discussed at this time.
Well, but yes, and I agree. But let's, the extreme liberal left, they always tout the environmental movement and so on and so forth, green energy and so on, and clean air, clean water. But yet it seems that they're running cover for these agencies. I mean, I find that very compelling and very disturbing that they're actually running interference and for these agencies and running cover to give them license to do so, and of course anybody that speaks up, they're going to make you look like a kook.
I have a call. One second. I have a caller. Please go ahead, Mrs. Peterson. Answer to Mr. Borrelli, and then I have a caller. Get him. Go ahead.
The problem with all of these groups is that they've kind of been co-opted into a mantra. And you see, the hard part that I have is that when they say, "Oh, we have climate change, we've got to fix it, and therefore we're going to have a carbon tax on everything." That isn't going to make a difference. It's not going to stop the tornadoes or the hurricanes or weather events ongoing across the United States. And we tend to be cyclic with warming and cooling periods around the world at various times. So when you talk about, well, we're just going to have a carbon tax and that's going to solve all these problems, I don't believe a word of it. Not a word. The other thing is that the environmental groups only like to take on issues they think they can win. They want to raise money for themselves, and they don't want to speak out on certain issues because, you're right, they could lose their funding. You're right.
Well,
they have an agenda, and that agenda is not always an educated agenda as to what's really happening.
Very good.
Well,
go ahead, Mrs.
that breaks it down right there. They create the problem, so the only thing a liberal's ever liberated really is money out of your pocket. So,
if I can interact 1 second, I don't even think this is about anymore a liberal or funny conservative topic, because this issue seems like it's going beyond administration. It didn't start just the last few years or the last few months. This went through during different administration, from Republican administration to Democrat administration. It almost seems like it's independent from any type of form of government. It seems like, presidents come and go, but at the end of the day, this program has been going on for a long time. And I found a piece of information that I think Mr. Borrelli, Representative Borrelli, may enjoy it. I put it on his Facebook page. It's called Weather as a Force Multiplier, Owning the Weather in 2025. And this is it is not a conspiracy, a PDF file directly from the Air Force military.mil. So it's something that maybe you should look into that, Mr. Borrelli, because it's some information that even the military, beside, of course, what Mrs. Peterson saying, everybody can hire now this expert in geoengineering, weather modification. You pay them and they can make you rain or snowing or whatever you want, or even no water at all. We have here the military that they admitted that they have this as a potential weapon. And just to reinforce this topic, there was an article, there was an HR, House resolution, I think House bill, from Representative Kucinik, that, by the way, is, it's Mr. Dennis Kucinik, that exactly the bill was Space Preservation Act of 2001, and in this bill originally, he wrote the word exactly, the mention of chemtrails among the different weapons, particle beams, electromagnetic radiation, and he mentioned chemtrails. And according to what happened, he was warned by the military to never use this word anymore. And this new bill, the new revised bill, H.R. 3616, it was introduced after, and the word chemtrail was gone. This is official record from Congress. So I want just to share that. Mrs. Peterson, I have somebody on the phone who wants to ask you a question. Let's see if he's still there. Hello, caller?
Yeah, hi. Great show. Thanks to everybody that's on the show, Sonny Borrelli and Rosalind. This is Al calling in from Golden Valley, and I just want to remind everybody that's listening to try and not ignore the obvious. You can see the skies change when they spray. It's in the patents, the U.S. patents. The strontium, aluminum, barium, it's in our blood, it's in our rain, it's in our hair follicles. So what we need to do is have more people, such as Sonny Borrelli and other people, Karen Johnson and other elected people, Kelly Ward perhaps, to speak out and denounce these constant dumps upon us. Now, I heard about these chemtrails, and I'm not afraid to use the word because that's what it is. And it was just back in Vegas when I was living up there and met Ted Gunderson. Might want to look up Ted Gunderson and also Dane Wigington. Ted is dead. Dane is still alive, and he's got some really good information out there. But, we can sit around and debate this forever, but the fact of the matter is people are sick and dying. The agriculture is one thing, but there is direct effect to our health, my health, and many people that I know. So if we don't get on the ball and get everybody to stand up and denounce this, just like they're doing with the BLM, everybody should be now denouncing this. But that's all I have to say.
Thank you all. I appreciate the call, okay? Thank you very much.
Yeah, good luck.
Thank you. Mrs. Peterson, are you still there?
Yes, I'm here.
Perfect. A little frustration here. I know Al pretty well. We live in Golden Valley. And first of all, it is very sad. I love Arizona. I love the sky. When I moved here 8 years ago, it was the most beautiful sky I ever dreamt. We don't really have any type of pollution. And the jets, the regular commercial jets, they're very limited. It is magic. It was magic. Now I feel like I'm living a nightmare. I get up in the morning, it's all white. I feel like I'm in some sort of a northern Italy town with this fog. 1 second. Let's see what is calling here. Caller, are you on the air? Are you?
Hello, Luca?
Who is calling?
This is Michelle.
Michelle, nice to meet you. Where are you calling from?
Bellhead City.
Michelle, I know the Michelle I'm talking
Luca.
about.
Hi, Sonny. How you doing?
How are you?
You're also here with the Mrs. Rosalind Peterson, as you know.
Mrs. Peterson.
Go ahead with the
So
questions.
Happy to have you on the show. The reason I'm calling is I started being aware of this situation back in the 90s. And I had read about it online, and I thought, wow, this is crazy. And I walked outside to take a look up into the skies. And I stopped counting at 25 chemtrails going across my beautiful, used to be crystal blue skies. Luca, you're familiar with my lab work. You know that I have a barium blood level of 280, and my strontium and aluminum is also elevated. And I think I'm the poster child for Mojave County. Also, I live in a sunshine state, lots of sunshine normally, but I have watched my skies turn milky white, and my vitamin D level is dangerously low at 7, when it should be 40 to 100. And I've been taking 50,000 international units of vitamin D prescription quality for 2 years now, and it hasn't budged. So I would like to have your input on that, Rosalind and Sonny.
Okay, thank you very much. Mrs. Peterson, go ahead, please.
Okay. I have a vitamin D section on my website, and what began to surprise me, but not, was that when we first began to see persistent jet contrails in the man-made clouds and the haze, this dates back to the late 1980s in Mendocino County and parts of Northern California, where we could research going back through thousands and thousands of old photographs to take a look at the skies and to see when we could first detect that our skies were beginning to change. The CDC and University of California at Berkeley have both come out, along with multiples of other investigative and research projects, have come out showing that there is a lack of vitamin D and that rickets is showing up in the United States across the country in epidemic forms in some places. The rickets was not seen in the United States except in times when children worked in coal mines and worked indoors during the day instead of going to school, and they had a lack of direct sunlight hitting their skin. And this man-made cloud cover that we're undergoing, and all of the research and studies talk about increasing cloud cover, but we're having the human health effects of a lack of vitamin D. I put a section on the website on vitamin D alone because the research on this subject and the lower levels of vitamin D and the related research on the health effects are tremendous. And a lack of vitamin D, you can't just take pills and make up the difference between what the direct sunlight and your skin absorb. And so I'm concerned that a lot of the health effects that we're experiencing now are from a lack of vitamin D from this increasing cloud cover. Now, the CDC, university studies, everywhere they talk about increasing cloud cover, they use that terminology, but they never relate it to the jets that are keeping our skies keeping the skies cloudy, and so therefore we don't have as much direct sunlight reaching the earth. So I'm really concerned that no one is understanding and identifying this as a problem. But when you look at the research and the studies, I found it was stunning. And that now we have to buy pills. Well, how about in other words, reduce this man-made cloud cover produced by the jets and have our skies clear up and get normal weather back.
Mm-hmm.
Clear at night to allow the evaporation of heat away from the earth and direct sunlight reaching the earth so that we have a healthier environment and our trees and our plants and our crops can do better. I mean, I don't know why we're not looking at multiple problems, both economic, financial, and human health, with regard to the man-made cloud cover that we're seeing and its impacts. And nobody seems to want to talk about it because they want to engage in speculation and theories instead of what is now being demonstrated that is a problem through research.
Liz, I'm so happy today. If the only purpose of the show was to have you here and to meet our state representative, Sonny Borrelli, in the studio, and I know that probably even Senator Kelly Ward, she's listening, and I'm sure maybe after Mr. Borrelli comes back with his information, I can verify all these facts. You guys, if you can, and I appreciate your help, because I know, Mr. Peterson, you've been on a mission, and this is something like, it's like almost your mission out there. You try to help to share this information that is vital to all humanities, not just to the people of Arizona, California, or America. It's about us as a human race. Have the right to thrive, to be healthy, to prosper with our economy, with our agriculture. This is something serious happening to this planet, and you're doing a great job. So I appreciate today, maybe at the end of the show, you can exchange. I will forward your email to Representative Borrelli, so you'll be in touch with you guys, and maybe Mr. Borrelli can learn more after the show, and hopefully other people in Phoenix, because, Mrs. Borrelli, you are today the first, and I would like to thank you for that, to be here, willing to learn, not be afraid to touch this topic, while many other people have been given the same information I gave you and they just ignore it. So I give you credit for that. At least you have integrity to want to learn, because the first role of government and people that we elect in government is supposed to be, in my opinion, and according also to the Declaration of Independence, to defend our rights. And among those, life, liberty. Okay, so we are really at this point. But we have the second hour. I hope, Sonia, you still going to stay with me?
Oh, yeah, you bet.
Mrs. Peterson, would you like to stay with me a little more?
Yes, I can stay with you a little bit more. I'd love to. I'd like, if you wouldn't mind, I'm going to take a 3-minute break because I have to take something that I put into the oven out, but I can be back in about 3 minutes.
I keep you on hold, okay? You don't need to do anything, just unless you want to hang up.
No, I'm not going to hang up.
Perfect. I'll keep you on hold, okay? Thank you very much. Stay there. Okay. So at least a great show. We still have a few more seconds. Michael, any question? Let's talk with any feedback. What do you think so far?
Well, I'm excuse me. I'm wondering, is this a global program, geoengineering?
Yes, it's happening everywhere, at least in most of the Western countries.
So I think we should look toward the UN to see if they're involved.
That's a good question. And by the way, right now, just people send me photos from Italy. Genova, it's white. Germany, you can't see anything. You see this plane, the same planes we have here. There is a lot of money behind because we're talking about, Mrs. Borrelli, I mean...
Billions. Now, how many of those, do we have any research for any of the Eastern Bloc countries?
That's a good question. I heard that, for example, in Russia, they're not doing it.
About China.
That's another thing, they don't do it. But we'll find out more. Meanwhile, we have a sponsor we didn't talk, okay? The Colorado River Vapor. Without them, we wouldn't be here, okay, guys? Please. Highway 95, 4400, South Highway 95, Sweet Sea. My God, they are the greatest. Colorado River Vapor. Michael, say something.
They have 2 locations now, Luca.
Oh, gosh, I forgot. No, go ahead, please.
Okay, they're also in Bullhead City, 1931 Highway 95, in the old Alien Tattoo Building. They have premium e-juices, advanced smokeless personal vaporizers. So catch the wave and vape.
Okay, guys, see you the second hour. Don't go away. Ciao.
He's a songwriter, a poet, a rifleman,
I'm not afraid.
and a constitutional activist.
I'm not afraid.
Italian by birth,
I'm not afraid.
American by choice. Gianluca Zanna
I'm not afraid.
and his new CD, Love, Guns, and Freedom. 16 powerful songs on one CD from the heart of a patriot. For download or to order the CD, go to www.lovegunsfreedom.com. That's www.lovegunsfreedom.com. Lyrics for your mind, music for your heart. Gianluca Zanna's new CD, Love, Guns, and Freedom.
You can't handle the
Okay, we are back with Mrs. Rosalind Peterson from California, and also with our state Arizona representative Sonny Borrelli and Michael and Luca. Mrs. Peterson, let me get you back on the air. Are you there, Mrs. Peterson?
Yes, I'm here.
Perfect. Thank you very much. We have here Representative Sonny Borrelli has one very important question. I think make a lot of sense. Please tell me what you were telling me during the break.
Which one?
About, there are a lot of, first of all, these planes, okay?
Okay, like the military planes.
Somebody must fly these planes.
Military aircraft, like I said, I was in the Marines for 22 years, but, so in my experience, that the ones that are going to be career military, they're probably going to look the other way. They're going to keep their mouths shut. But I look at those younger troops, and if I ever wanted to find out what was going on, what was wrong with one of the companies or one of the platoons, I didn't talk to the platoon commander or the company commanders. I went and spoke to them PFCs and privates because, they're out of the mouths of babes. They cough up all kinds of information, tell you what's really going on and stuff like that. So why is that silent from these troops that were in the service, or particularly the Air Force that are involved in this aircraft? How come they're not coming forward? So, that's one thing that's just nagging at me. But unless they're picking and choosing, obviously, the career service member that's going to stay on those aircraft. There's a will, there's a way, and,
So the question is why you think not enough people are coming out to speak up, especially if the military is involved. What do you think, Mrs. Peterson, about that?
I have no idea who knows or how widespread. I don't know if in other words, you're right, it could be military career paths. It's hard to know. But what I do know is that all of the flights over Mendocino County where I live, we have the flight paths of the aircraft from U.S. Congressman Thompson for commercial and military aircraft of a certain size. And it was the intra-flights that were circling around us and doing the X's and the cross hatches. And I put it online just because I wanted people to see that in our area, what we were talking about is not the straight line A to B commercial airline flights that were coming out of Oakland, San Jose, and San Francisco or Sacramento, and either arriving or leaving, that the loops and the circles and all of these other flights that leave us in this man-made cloud cover were not along commercial airline patterns. The only planes that can circle our county, do all kinds of different types of maneuvers, would be military aircraft. And the reason that I also know this is because commercial airlines have no extra fuel to waste. They're on time schedules. And if they were flying as we see them do around our county, going in all kinds of different directions, flying over the ocean, circling around, coming back over us, they would be off course, and they wouldn't be able to keep their flight schedules, nor would they have the fuel. So part of why we're in the cloud cover, man-made cloud cover that we see a lot of the times is from these military flights. And so commercial airlines probably also leave persistent jet contrails and other things, but their patterns can be easily tracked because they're on flight patterns. So the FAA has all those flight patterns. So a quick look in areas where you see all these flights, but there's no commercial airline straight line patterns coming in and out of major airports would actually show who is doing this and, in other words, the impacts. The military has also done some research quite heavily on how to fly without leaving contrails in the man-made clouds that they produce. They have done that as well. So it's not like this is a science that has to go into, some sort of research. The military has been working on that since the 1960s and 70s and beyond, as they worked with different kinds of jet fuels that they use. Now the military uses JP5 for the Navy, JP7, 8, all these different jet fuels and configurations for the different types of planes they use, different than commercial JP4, which is used in most commercial airlines. So it's even a different type of jet fuel that they're using. So I hope that kind of answers some question about, in other words, when we look into who, you have to look into who has the fuel and can run the expenses of doing the type of flights that they do over us and in other areas.
And by the way, yes, and there is also some few voices out there, because I tell you, these people have a lot to lose. I mean, especially when you work for the government, and your paycheck and your pension comes from them. I am sure that position is a very dangerous position to speak up. There is a lady that she's been pretty famous on the internet. She's a veteran, Air Force veteran, and she retired. She used to work at the Pentagon. I know that Representative Borrelli also watched the video, and right now I forget the name, but I will post it on the page. Anyway, she's been exposing at least all these strange things happening in the sky, and she had access to documents and information that was very disturbing. And she had to leave the service because she could not serve anymore, knowing what she knew. And she also is a mom, so it's kind of interesting. I understand it takes a lot of courage, and for many people, probably they cannot afford even to speak up. Even, of course, unfortunately, they're all going to pay the consequences because we live in the same environment. I have a question also, because we're talking about the agricultural potential damage. I'm just a regular little home farmer. I have my little, greenhouse, and I grow my own vegetables. And Mrs. Peterson, this is a little experience I had. Maybe it's a coincidence. I didn't have enough scientific data to do it, but I did something that I would like to share with you and the public. A couple years ago, I started to grow zucchini, okay? Organic heirloom zucchinis. And for some reason, the flower is beautiful, the plant is beautiful, there was no fruit, nothing. At the same time, I put in the same type of dirt, same water, same environment, GMO, this genetically modified zucchini directly from one of the big companies you can buy in town. And everything was beautiful. I mean, the best zucchini I ever seen. I didn't eat it, of course, but it was great. And I started to say, wow, strange, same air, same weather, same dirt, same water. The heirloom organic zucchini that I know, the beautiful thing about the heirloom, you can always replant the seed. So the fruit is alive, is not sterile. Instead, if I want to, but it didn't work. The same time, same season, I have this GMO zucchini, and they were doing great. And of course, I dump them. And of course, the problem that you always need to buy seeds back to the master. Now, by accident, and I didn't have a chance to verify, this is something I found on the internet from different sources, but maybe you can tell me more. There is this big, huge company that everybody knows. It's called Monsanto. This seems like, allegedly, they have the patent for aluminum resistance gene for some type of seeds. Do you know anything about it, Mrs. Peterson?
Yes, I know a little about this because I've done some research on it, and I'm concerned about GMO seeds because it makes us dependent upon a certain corporation to get seeds, because more and more the plants that the hybrids now and GMO seeds don't reproduce themselves. So what happens is that you have to be dependent on a corporation to buy seeds when seeds used to be available because you would save them and replant them yourself. So this is a tremendous problem. Also, I do know that they have been working on GMO-resistant, aluminum-resistant plants for some time, but if you take a look at a soil sample, it would be interesting to know what you would find in your soil sample with regard to aluminum, with regard to pH problems, what might be there, because it sometimes an imbalance will cause a problem as well, or too much aluminum can impair certain types of plants from growing, or too much salt as well. So it's hard to know, and I don't know why your GMO zucchini reproduced and not your heirloom plants. I'm not sure. And that would take a little bit of research because I don't have all the specifics to that. But I can tell you that zucchini plants here are not doing and producing as well as in some other areas in California. And I do know that the tomatoes now are becoming, the tomato plants are having less ability to reproduce tomatoes over and over again from the same plants. And they're beginning to ripen so late in the year that you usually only get one growing of tomatoes or two at the best, whereas we used to have tomatoes, plants growing tomatoes all the way from May all the way through November, and the first frost came. So there's definitely been a change in agriculture for many people. They're seeing the differences. And also we have another symptom where when you grow a zucchini plant and it just turns, it's beautiful and it's nice and everything is working, you have enough bees to pollinate, and all of a sudden the leaves without a frost will just turn brown and just crisp up, and the plant will just have to almost start over again to start growing. And we're seeing more of this phenomenon occurring, which is not due to frost. So I'm concerned that some of our atmospheric experiments, some of the things that we may be doing, can impair our ability to feed ourselves and human health as well.
Yes, and now, first of all, from my point of view as a regular person that I just have a regular brain with two eyes, I start always from the things I can see, okay? And I see that, first of all, my blue sky, Arizona blue sky, is being stolen from me. And that's the first thing that I think everybody that remember the way it used to be here, we should notice something's happening in our sky. Second thing I really start to do, even without trained eyes or any type of background, I say, okay, there are airplanes here that do not belong to the regular day pattern. And they, of course, they fly lower, and they have some sort of intermittences, and they can switch on and off, because the interesting thing that they don't just always spray technically, they go on and off. And in my little observation, they do that mostly in Mojave County overpopulated area. For example, in Kingman, they start exactly before the Wallapai Mountain, just before the city, and they stop at the end. Same thing for Golden Valley. So must be a reason why that. Then I start to say, okay, why they're doing this? and this is just my humble opinion, maybe there are more than one reason. You know, we were talking about today with you about the military doing experimentation for military purposes. I brought up a document. We own the sky, we own the weather by 2025. This is directly from Air Force website. We're talking about anybody with the permit, or at least with a little bit of money, they can hire a company, and please correct me if I'm wrong, and can say, okay, let's play God and let's start to play with the weather. I have right now just posted a document from the Colorado Water Conservation Board. This is an official document from the Colorado website, government, weather modification program. Right there, spell it out. What type of permit you need, when they started it, and all these things. So now, maybe there is also some other hidden reason, like economic reason. Mr. Borrelli, what do you think so far, all this information you got through your brain?
Be honest with you, it's fascism. I mean, it's fascism in the economic sense, because let me read to you what I'm talking about. It's an economic system of fascism. Fascism is socialism with a capitalist veneer. In other words, the government, in accordance with business, and it derives from the first original word, from the Roman word "fasc."
Yeah, that's what Mussolini used to call corporatism, the union between corporation and government.
Right. So a Roman symbol of collectivism and power, a bundle of rods with the protruding axe. Back in the 20s and the 30s, between the boom and bust prone liberal capitalism and its alleged class conflict, they create this conflict. And of course, if they create the problem, then they already have the solution. And of course, that's going to be the capitalist solution, that they're tied together. So that way, they're crony capitalists. They're the ones who get the government money and the funding. And then, of course, then they create an environment for another way to tax us, to have us pay for it. So I mean, it's all about power. It's all about control. Like you said, the GMO engineered seeds. Okay, you have to get the seeds from one person, because they made it that way, and you can only buy the reseeds, and guess who's the sources that they created.
And also another thing, Mrs. Peterson, we have now all this drought in the Southwest. I'm sure you know about it. California is one of very terrible situation, I heard. So also Arizona, we have Lake Mead at the lowest minimum level of water. I have a question. Since the government and also the private, I mean, we have such a technology that we can manipulate the weather, how is possible that we are facing the biggest drought of history of the Southwest, at least in the last 50 years? What is your opinion? What do you think is maybe some hidden plan behind?
Well, when you start to modify the weather, you definitely change the climate. And when you start to conduct experiments, in other words, various types of atmospheric experiments, it can have a tremendous impact on weather. And one of the things that I'm going to send to you right now are the NOAA summary of weather modification activities as reported by NOAA across the United States. And these summaries talk about, in other words, the project site. It tells you which state they're in. It tells you the month of the weather modification experiments, who does it, the number of square miles involved. For example, in Utah, they enhanced precipitation, for example, over 184,000 square miles. Now, if you look at that, that's an area that's bigger than the state of California. If you want to know how much weather modification they're doing in square miles, it's tremendous. And other ones, 8,000 square miles. They also tell you whether they're going to augment snow or precipitation in those areas. So you have to really realize that this is changing. In other words, the whole dynamic of our climate and our weather, and can cause droughts. Now, I have a letter under the Bush administration from the Executive Office of the President, Office of Science and Technology. This was dated December 13, 2005. It was written to U.S. Senator Kay Bailey Hutchison, and it was from John H. Marburger III, who is director at that time of the Office of Science and Technology Policy. Senator Hutchison wanted to put through a bill to put in about $10 million worth of weather modification programs funded yearly across the United States, and without any public control, without anything. And the letter, I sent you a copy of the letter today.
Yes, thank you.
But specifically, this is what the quote is. It says, quote, specifically, the administration believes concerns in the following areas must be better understood. Local, political, and legal ramifications. Because small-scale weather modification, example, cloud seeding, may promote rain in one area to the detriment of another, weather modification could result in interstate litigation or private citizen litigation against the modification programs. The legal and liability issues pertaining to weather modification and the potential adverse consequences on live property and water resources availability resulting from weather modification activities must be carefully considered and considered fully before the U.S. government can take responsibility for this new research program. And then he goes on to list international and foreign policy implications, national security implications, research issues, etc. in the letter. But I want to say that it is clear that there's an understanding that weather modification programs can negatively impact some areas. PG&E modifies the weather, for example, in Plumas County, Northern California, and surrounding areas are in drought conditions. Now, Plumas County has a lot of water because of snow enhancement there, but when you go to surrounding communities, they're in drought because they don't get their normal snow or rainfall, and thus their reservoirs are drying up. So you have to really begin to examine the implications. PG&E's efforts in weather modification in the Sierra Nevadas can definitely impact the state of Nevada. Because if we take more rain and snow for projects in our mountains, then what happens is that there would be less to move across downwind as the storm would move for other states. So the implications from this are very broad, and the United States government lists these programs. I mean, they're not secret.
Exactly. And Mr. Borrelli, this is something really that at state level, it's our business on top of our health. I'm talking about also our economy. I mean, our water, especially in the southwest Arizona, that is so precious. If we can prove, and I think we have a lot of evidence here, that somebody, or by accident, or by negligence, or by being irresponsible, or maybe by hidden design, is been playing with the weather, and indirectly or directly, they're messing up with our water potential reserve that we have. We have a serious case here that you guys in Phoenix, you got a battle for us and for you because you live here too. What do you think about this? This is serious information that Mrs. Peterson is bringing up.
Well, I agree. There is a definite jurisdiction for state rights sovereignty on this issue that we need to be concerned with, and we need to protect against. So, or protect and protect the state of this kind of activity. And I do believe that we have the authority to look into this and put some pressure on Congress and what other bureaucratic agency that's behind all this or is actually perpetrating. We need to take a look at this. And I do believe this is a states' rights issue. We have to protect our jurisdiction and our sovereignty. It's said so. We have very limited powers that we gave to the federal government, and they've overreached that on numerous occasions with numerous agencies and organizations.
Mrs. Peterson, do you have any type of feedback so far with your local, state, or local elected representatives regarding this great information and sad information that you're bringing as evidence? Did you have any type of success or any type of results or something happening in California?
Well, we did defeat Kay Bailey Hutchison's bill. She brought it up before the Senate, and it was also brought up before the House, and we lobbied Washington, D.C. here very heavily, and the bill was consistently defeated whenever it went through committee except once, and then it never made it to the Senate floor or the floor of the House. But we had to lobby in Washington, D.C. from California, and of course we talked to our own senators and congressmen who knew about this issue and weren't going to vote for it or support it. But I can tell you that see, the federal government and the states are not. There's a gap here in that any private individual, myself included, if I have the money, I can hire a weather modification company in the United States. And in most states, there's no. Texas has a Bureau of Weather Modification. The Texas Board has one, and they actually tax their citizens to conduct weather modification programs. And that's the only one that I think I know of that taxes citizens.
Wow.
But most of the time, you can conduct your weather modification programs anywhere, and there's no restriction on private individuals. See, a ski resort, for example, on the list that I sent you from NOAA,
yes,
enhances snow over their ski resort for financial gain. But downwind of them, who is impacted, as the storm would flow along the jet stream, who is impacted and doesn't get the snow or the rain that is diverted to a ski resort.
It's true. It is true. Unfortunately, exactly what I really find disturbing, there are so many different entities, some private for commercial gain, some maybe they could be the government for military or, experimentation or whatever. Maybe there is another theory that I will tell you, just my personal opinion, of course, nobody else. And it's about maybe there's more sinister plan about it to control our resources, like our food, our water, and of course our number of population. But beside that, who are these people that they think they have God's power to mess with our nature, with our environment, with our lives? And I find disturbing that all these years, besides few exceptions, like you, for example, you've been doing this crusade for many years. And I know other people out there that try to, even myself in my little community, the last 6 years, I've been trying to scream like with other friends, like few of us, like crazy, because after you start to look like a crazy, I'm sorry. But why? Finally, we cannot change this. I think we can. I think today is historical, by the way. I know that Mr. Borrelli means well. Representative Borrelli is a regular guy. What I like about the state of Arizona, first of all, they are not professional politicians, most of them. They come here, they have term limits, they have 3 terms, they do their job, and then they need to move on. That's 4 terms. So that's the point. So they're not forever. And he has family. He's a guy that already took an oath to defend his country. He means well. He wasn't afraid to die for his country when he was a soldier. I think today he can lead a good battle, a battle for our freedoms, for our health in Phoenix. And I am so glad you, Mrs. Peterson, you're here sharing all this hard evidence, because I am not the expert. I'm just a regular guy trying to read and learn. But you being the expert, you are the expert. So today, please, go ahead, Mr. Borrelli.
That bill that Senator Hutchinson had, what was that bill again?
Well, it first came out in 2005, and it was U.S. Senate Bill 517. That was the bill number, and it was around until 2012 in the Senate, because she would reintroduce it, and it would be a different number, because she'd have to reintroduce it in the scheme of things every year. The letter that was written was in 2005, and that was the first number was U.S. Senate Bill 517. And there was a corresponding bill in the House. And that bill we had to roundly defeat by working really hard at it and educating our elected officials here in California and others about it. But Senator Hutchinson was determined to bring that bill up every 2 years when a new election cycle came up.
What did that bill do?
It set up a governing board to conduct experimental weather modification programs in the United States with $10 million in funding. and that the people that would be in charge of it were the actual people who wanted to conduct said programs, and that the public was cut off from any type of input or oversight or knowledge of what they would be doing.
Okay.
In regard, I have a copy of the bill.
No, I remember that one. Thanks. I just wanted to refresh my memory. Okay, I'm with you. I understand.
Yeah. So this was an effort that was made by the people in Arizona, in Phoenix, Arizona. This was an effort by many people. It wasn't just me. It was many people that lobbied on this, made calls. A woman from Arizona and I split the U.S. Senate directory and the U.S. House directory and began to make telephone calls round the clock to contact everybody that we didn't want this bill to pass. And then there was lobbying that was done in Washington, D.C. in the halls of Congress.
Very interesting. And this is things they know. What I'm saying here, when they pass a bill or they're trying to pass a bill to make it legal, at least to make it in a way that they already been doing it behind our back in different ways. Now they just try to make it, for example, in a way, according to what I understand, to make it normal. And when they have the law, they think, hey, it's lawful. Yeah. Speaking about law, are you aware of this U.S. Code Title 50, Section 1520? Anyway, it's a long story. It's a federal law that pretty much says that supposedly this federal law is supposed to repeal some of this weather experimentation or on this in the air, but with some exceptions. So there was like, yes, we admit that there were this problem. We are taking care of it. At the same time, according to this federal law that I will publish, by the way, because it's kind of complex code title, but it's there. It's official, by the way. There are some exceptions in case, for example, of pharmaceutical research or crowd control or national security. Yes, the government can use any type of chemicals or agents in the air to do their experimentation. This is something that I wanted to share, especially with Mr. Borrelli, because this is the U.S. Code Title 50, Section 1520, and it is important, and I think that even me not being a lawyer or an educated person in the law field, I can read exactly what they say. And by the way, the interesting thing, this link that I had directly from the to their website, now is being cut off. The page is dead, by the way. I need to find some ghost page because for some reason. Mrs. Peterson, if you have to say a message to anybody's listening, this video, by the way, this audio will also go on YouTube. I will send to every legislator in Phoenix by the end of this week because I want everybody in the state of Arizona to understand that we have a serious problem. What would be your message to an elected person that has the duty to do something to take care of our environment, our health, our lives, especially regarding this problem, the geoengineering problem? What would be your final message to them?
Well, first of all, they have to get away from linking it so heavily with chemtrails and the opinions and beliefs and theories behind chemtrails. And second of all, they have to look at the impacts on our environment of what we're seeing in the skies, these jet contrails and haze and man-made clouds and other things, to really take a look at, in other words, putting a stop to this because it's directly impacting our environment. I do want to say one other thing, too. Several years ago, I was listening to a radio program in San Francisco, California, after I had been working on this subject for some time, putting the results of my investigations onto my website, which is mostly an educational website, so I put government studies and documents up on it so that the public has a research basis if they need it on certain topics. And what I discovered was they were having a discussion of pandemics, and flu epidemics, and it was being heavily discussed at one time. And there was an expert by the name of Gil Smolin who was an expert in epidemics and pandemics worldwide. And in the interview on KGO Radio in San Francisco, this one particular day, he was asked the question, what would stop an epidemic or a pandemic? by the talk show host. And what he said was direct sunlight. The talk show host was so taken back, as well as me. I had to stop and pull off on the freeway, on the side of the freeway, and take out a piece of paper and start taking notes, because all of a sudden it made sense. He was talking, and so the talk show host asked him again, couldn't believe the answer, and the fellow said, look, in the wintertime, when it's cloudy, when you have moist conditions, these certain conditions, your epidemic and or a pandemic can continue to grow. But if you have direct sunlight, then that acts as a disinfectant, and your epidemic or pandemic would slow down and stop. And that's why there's less illnesses a lot of times in the summertime, because you have more direct sunlight. I thought that this was most interesting. And this began to fit in with all this cloud cover and talking about health effects and increasing in rickets. It began to make sense to me what was going on at certain times, and that we weren't getting the beneficial effect of direct sunlight, and that's why we have more problems with molds and mildews and funguses that we never saw here before.
Yes. I start to see that it is a pattern, and that's why I'm trying to really, form my own opinion about all this information. It's not like there is one reason. There are, in my opinion, there are so many different cui bonus, so many different situations that is going to benefit different entities. And with the one that you just mentioned, I think it's very important that we cannot underestimate. There is a plan at global level to try to limit the number of the population. I mean, this is not a conspiracy. There are different also in the World Health Organization, United Nations. Bill Gates is public going out and say that we must reduce the number. They don't even just talk about reducing the number, talking about completely depopulate. So I don't know now today. I cannot say for sure if this is one of it, but I tell you, it's doing for sure some sort of a help towards that direction, because right now our food supplies, they are pretty much limited, especially because of the water. Look in California, I know that the bill in Arizona now for many fruit and vegetables you have to buy went up because California is in desperate need for water. So right there, people need to eat less, okay? Go ahead, Michael, please.
Well, I got a message from someone listening to the show, and he's thinking that maybe this is just partly plain old greed to use up the available water. I mean, our population is increasing in the West, which puts a bigger demand on availability of water.
Okay, so what's the question? You think they're just greed? They think, I don't know. Mr. Peterson, what do you think? You think it's just greed?
Well, if you talk about GMO seeds and the collecting of seeds to be only bought from corporations and not saved seeds, I think that has to do with control and greed, and I really object to that. As far as the water issues, I think that there's a lot of different issues that are involved at this point, and we need to get to the root of the problems, because not only the United States but other countries are engaged in weather modification programs at many various levels. So, in other words, you can bet on the weather now. That listing I sent to you from NOAA of weather modification programs, I could go down to the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. In other words, there's betting on the weather. It's a multi-billion worldwide business.
Insurance is involved, of course.
And so what happens is, if for example, Pacific Gas and Electric Company enhances the snow in Plumas County, and they know what month they're going to do it, they know the programs, they could bet and make a fortune on the stock market betting, because they know the end result.
Exactly. And I think today, if we can accomplish at least the goal that we can see there is a problem, because before we want to solve the problem, we need to admit that there is a problem, because I still have a lot of problems here with friends and people that I know. They refuse to even raise the eyes to the sky for fear. They know that something stinks, but they don't want to face it. So if finally, as Americans, as human beings today, in our community, we have also a leadership here that our state representative want to learn all this. And I hope Senator Ward would like to follow. And I will hope that also our state representative, Doris Goodell, may jump onto this. We can lead the way in the state of Arizona to start at least to say, say, we have a serious problem. You can bring us, you can help us. You already did. You got so much information just out of your website, and just the documents that you send me. It's amazing. These are hard copy documents, like the letter from the Senate and all this information from NOAA. I mean, once we have that, we can address at state level that we have a serious problem here called geoengineering. Now we can start to investigate cui bonus, and more important, how can we stop it? I believe that morally, the duty of every human being, when he has to face between good and evil, silent is consent. So every one of us, regardless if you're elected or not, you have the duty to speak up for good. When you see something stinks, something's evil, I think it's our normal human goodness to go out and say, I denounce this, I'm not part of it. Number one. Number two, when you've been given these limited powers by the people to represent us, you can speak for us. That would be a very important thing, you know, to have every legislator in every state start to say, Washington, don't tell us that we are stupid. We know that there is a problem here. Then we need to use our 10th Amendment, in my opinion, and our state sovereignty, because we have resources here. We can still do something to start to limit and curb, or at least not being part of it. And finally, I think we can reach critical mass. And we will remember the day that everybody, you know, used to try to ignore that, or a few people that were trying to speak up, and we were the idiots and the crazy and the cuckoo and then tinfoil hat, all the names that have been called the last few years. Regardless, I don't care. We are here. We want to preserve the next generation, and for us, what this beautiful planet and this beautiful state give us. Mrs. Peterson, I love you very much. I tell you this, I don't know you in person, but I love your job. I love your work. I love your courage. I love the fact that you've been a leader into this. You bring hard science into this. You don't just go out and try to spread noises and voices. And I think with your help and other people help, and Mr. Borrelli help here, our state representative, and other legislator, hopefully, we can start to turn this around. At least we will fight back, because I think it's depressing to being staring at the sky all day, taking photos and video and going crazy. Mr. Peters, I'll let you the last word before I let you go. Please go ahead, and then Mr. Borrelli.
Well, what I hope is that I want to say that what you heard here today, we can back up with university studies, government documents, all kinds of different information from various sources. And I'm not talking about websites with opinions and beliefs, but I tried to put enough information so that people could actually see the research and look at it. And so this is why I think it's really important that if we want change, we have to stick to what we can prove. But what we can prove is devastating with regard to what's happening in our skies. And that I hope that Arizona isn't being impacted too tremendously from the ongoing weather modification programs that are being conducted around you in the country of Mexico, California, Nevada, Utah, and the state of New Mexico. So I hope that that you're not being impacted by those problems in any way, but it's hard to know.
Well,
Mr. Borrelli, go ahead, please.
Yeah, well, we have not all this cloud seeding, if you will, just to be facetious, has not helped our rainfall. So, I mean, why would you want to turn a desert and keep it a desert? So, I mean, let's go ahead and heat up the desert. So there's no benefit to what they're doing that I can see at all. I mean, we don't have an increase in rainfall.
We have our Lake Mead is at the lowest level.
Yes, that's true. And everybody's got a big straw coming out of that lake and out of the river too. So I don't see the benefit of any of this that if it is going on, and if we can really prove it that it's really going on here in Arizona, show me the benefits. But all I see is just. Like I said, more questions than I have answers.
Well, I don't have any history that Arizona is doing any weather modification itself at this point.
Well, we see, I see the sky and how some of them clouds are dissipating, not from end to end. It's dissipating, vertically, or horizontally. Excuse me.
All I say, maybe an official program with some sort of agencies, but I tell you, we have enough hard evidence. I'm talking about, I have videos of airplanes that they completely have a different type also of specification. They don't look anything like civilian airplanes. They have big holes under. I mean, I got a little camera with a zoom. I can see they have some sort of an opening. And they see that when they start, when they stop, this sort of spraying, whatever you want to call it. So this is maybe not an official program by some agencies, but there is something going on for sure. There is a caller. Let me get him, please. Caller, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Where are you? We have few little minutes, couple minutes. What's your name, please?
My name is Mike.
Mike, where are you calling from?
Bullhead City.
Very good. Please go ahead. Share your opinion or your question with Mrs. Peterson.
Well, basically, my opinion. I've lived here for on and off for the last 10 years or so, and I do a lot of outdoor activities, such as hunting a lot, and I would go out on the weekend or my days off, and I would be out there for 6 hours from sunrise to about noon, and in the Mojave Valley area, and I would see planes going overhead with they weren't contrails because the trails that they were leaving would stay for hours, and from towards the end of the day, you would have a whole grid over your head, and that grid of the I like to call them chemtrails, but they would start spreading, and then you would end up with a whole blanketed sky overhead where you had started out with a clear day. I've witnessed that probably every other day for 3 months at a time during the year.
So you notice there is something that is not normal. I mean, since you live here.
It's not.
Okay.
So I mean, as far as nothing. I'm sure it's not documented that it's not going on in Arizona, but I mean, I've seen it with my own eyes that it is going on, and they're not vapor trails. I mean, they're there and they have a purpose. They're going in a formation, creating a whole grid, and I really think, it's my opinion. I know you're trying to stick to scientific fact, but I really think you can trace a lot of it to most likely population control. I mean, if you're tracing the planes and who owns the planes to corporations or the military, government, the UN, etc., you're always going to find those agencies rooted in globalist, elitists that have in their documents and in their memoirs and in their writings that they're completely obsessed with population control.
Mrs. Peterson. Excuse me, Mike. I want to interrupt you. Mrs. Peterson, are you aware of Agenda 21?
Yes.
Very good. You think there is any type of connection, could be? Because we're talking about they want to relocate the people in some specific or urban areas and pretty much remove us from our country rural part of America. And one of the things make me really, just with my logic, simple guy, if there is no water, especially in the Southwest, my land, its value is zero. If I have a cattle, if I have farming, I cannot do any of this without water. And like right now, I tell you, Mojave County, where we live, our table, or water table, especially in Golden Valley, is going to a lowest level minimum. Most of us, we are on wells. And the moment that they're going to tell us there is no water, our land is going to be valued zero. All we can do is pack and move. And that's what I'm really, as much as it sounds like a conspiracy, unfortunately, there are evidence out there. Agenda 21, it is not a conspiracy, it's a fact. And so this geoengineering science, it's a fact. And the fact that our water level is the lowest level we ever had, it's a fact. Especially when they think they have such a technology, they should pretty much maybe help us out a little bit here. So this is just my little 2 cents of a regular guy opinion. Mrs. Peterson, I give you a hug, and I would like to remind your website. Please, go ahead. You remind the website for me, please. Which website, whatever you want, a website you want to spread out.
My website is agriculturedefensecoalition.org. If you go to the category section on that website, you will find a listing of all of the different subjects that are covered on my website, including many of the ones that were covered today. And I hope it helps everyone to In other words, have more information, solid information that they can use to go for change. And also, I want to encourage everyone that what's happening in our skies is definitely not normal, and it's having its impacts on all of us in various ways. And I'm hoping that we can begin to make a difference in that some of these programs are eliminated or stopped, because I feel that they don't benefit not only human health but our crops and our trees. And I think it's important that people know that our weathermen do not report weather modification programs on the news.
It is true. It is true. Mrs. Peterson, thanks again. I will put in contact you directly with the Arizona State Representative Sonny Borrelli, so he will receive your email, and hopefully you can have a very important continuous conversation about that. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Borrelli, I really like the fact that today you were here with us, and I really appreciate that. And I can say that also for a lot of people that they instant message me, they appreciate your willing to learn, your courage to at least stand to know what's going on, not being afraid to be called name when something like that, unfortunately, that's what happened the last few years. Nobody wanted to touch it. So I want to shake your hand, first of all.
Thank you.
First of all, tell us your website. You're running for election. I really want you in office now more than ever.
Well, I've got to update my website, but you can catch me on Facebook. I've got a Facebook page, and of course, instant message me if you want to have a question. I don't like to get into the big group chats because you always got some communist infiltrator that's just
it's okay, but
purposely agitate.
At least you're here. You try to learn, and my point is, we had a show together. We learned a lot about you the last few months. We have a lot of things we agree, some we may not agree, but the fact this is a very important issue. It is about, beside political partisanship, it is about us as Americans, as Arizona, is more important. So please be in touch with our state representative when you learn, share this information.
And you can also send me an email at sborrelli, Borrelli, @azledge.gov.